energy. And it's going to do that by providing $3 billion of incentives to companies both here domestically and overseas. And ultimately, it's hoping to attract more than $80 billion of investment into New South Wales, which could give our economy a boost of up to $600 million by 2030. Now, today we heard from the Treasurer, Matt Keane. He said that it will create 10,000 jobs here in New South Wales by 2030. We also heard from the Premier, Dominic Perrottet. He said to keep in mind that this is a long-term project, and so we won't be reaping all the benefits of it immediately. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
A lot of these investments, a lot of the jobs that created will not come tomorrow. They will come in years and decades to come. But making the tough decisions today, making the important decisions today will ensure greater opportunity, greater prosperity for the people of New South Wales and generations to come.
Crucially, this will also help New South Wales meet its emissions reductions targets. Last month, under a Berejiklian government, New South Wales committed to a 50% reduction by 2050. That was increased from 35%. As for what's happening at a federal level, we still don't know. Today, Cabinet is considering a net zero by 2050 target, but of course, some members of the Nationals are not quite on board with that plan. In terms of how this strategy will impact our coal industry in New South Wales, no doubt this is signalling a shift away from coal, and so the impact will be significant. Coal remains the biggest export for New South Wales, but Matt Keane says, the demand for coal is dropping globally, and really what we need to do is re-skill workers in the coal industry, move them sideways into the hydrogen industry, which has a longer-term future. Now, obviously, coal is still a big player here in New South Wales. We have new projects that are being approved regularly, and the New South Wales government says it's not turning its back on coal, just that now is the time to be investing in hydrogen when there is such great demand for it around the world.
The search for an 8-year-old boy who's been missing for 4 days in Western Australia is now a recovery operation. Reporter Kyle Pauletto is in Walpole on the state's south coast and joins me now. Kyle, what do police think has happened to the child?
The boy was camping in Fernhook Falls, just north of Walpole, when on Sunday he went kayaking in the river. It wasn't until his brother heard him cry out for help that his family was alerted to something going wrong, but by the time they reached the water, he was nowhere to be seen. So far, the boy's kayak and the paddle have been located, as well as the boy's jumper, which was found by his father, who went looking for him in the river. Superintendent Kim Travers spoke to the media earlier. This is what she had to say.
This morning a decision was made and the family were advised that we are now actually in a recovery phase of this particular incident, which means we are looking for the missing boy in that environment, and we don't suspect that we don't believe that he has survived this particular incident.
So, Kyle, what are the next steps in the operation?
The area that they've been searching is quite dense bushland, and the river that they believe he's gone into is quite dangerous and fast running, as we've had a lot of rain in the area recently. So to assist with the operation, they've brought in some new technology, as well as a new team specialised in this sort of operation. The new technology includes an automated camera that uses sonar technology to search the water. They believe that it's the new technology will be used and helpful to avoid the danger that is posed. At the moment, we've had 60 SES members searching, but the land has now been, it won't be searched anymore. It'll be strictly sticking to the water. Although this is a search, has changed to a recovery mission, the police have vowed to the families that they will bring their boy home.
Kyle Pauletto reporting from Walpole in WA. Former New South Wales Premier Mike Baird will be one of the first witnesses to give evidence at a corruption inquiry into Gladys Berejiklian. The ICAC is investigating whether Ms Berejiklian breached the public trust with multi-million-dollar grants awarded in her ex-boyfriend's electorate when she was State Treasurer. The former Premier says she's always acted with integrity throughout her career. The 2-week public hearing begins on Monday, and we'll also hear from Jobs Minister Stuart Ayres. Victoria's corruption inquiry has heard claims thousands of dollars were misappropriated from an electorate office budget to support a state MP's re-election campaign. Jean Edwards reports.
The corruption watchdog has been hearing from former Labor staffer Adam Sullivan, who used to work in the office of Federal Labor MP Anthony Byrne and State MP Adam Somyurek. While he was working in Mr Somyurek's office, Mr Sullivan says he was asked to start buying stamps from the electorate office budget in inconspicuous increments. Mr Sullivan says he ended up buying between $11,000 and $14,000 worth of these stamps, a fair number of which were then rerouted to the re-election campaign of Mordialloc MP Tim Richardson. Here's a little of what Mr Sullivan told the hearing this morning.
It was suggested that the purchase of these stamps take place in increments, nothing that would be conspicuous to the Department of Parliamentary Services. It was suggested that they take part in increments of maybe 2,000, 1,500, 1,000 stamps maybe every fortnight, something to that effect. And I think at the end of that process, personally myself, I purchased around $11,000 to $14,000 worth of $1 stamps. Those were, I imagine, a fair number of them were then rerouted to political purposes for the re-election of Tim Richardson and Mordialloc in 2018.
Mr Sullivan also told the hearing that Mr Byrne, Mr Somyurek and aspiring MP Steve Michelson gave him wads of cash stuffed into an envelope that were deposited into a kitty in Mr Byrne's office. Now, Anthony Byrne dropped a bomb on the first day of these corruption hearings on Monday when he admitted branch stacking himself and said that others had been doing it too, including Adam Somyurek and Minister Luke Donnellan, who quit the cabinet on Monday. The Premier Daniel Andrews has declared that he has always followed Labor Party rules and says that he's never paid for anyone else's memberships.
The High Court has thrown out Clive Palmer's latest legal stoush with the West Australian Government over his bid to develop his Balmoral South iron ore project in the Pilbara. The dispute has raged for years with mediation and court action before it finally reached the High Court. Elizabeth Byrne reports.
For Clive Palmer, it was personal. He even rocked up to the High Court himself to argue he'd been discriminated against as a Queenslander. At one point, he broke down in front of the High Court judges. Mr Palmer was challenging a West Australian law preventing him suing the state over its decisions about the mining proposal, which was first discussed in 2001. The law was introduced after court documents revealed Mr Palmer was hoping to sue the state for nearly $30 billion, almost the state's budget. Mr Palmer argued the law wasn't valid. But today the High Court ruled the law was valid and threw out claims it was at odds with the Constitution and discriminatory. Mr Palmer has been ordered to pay costs.
Free testing for COVID-19 has been an important part of the pandemic response around the world, but new rules in Germany means rapid testing without charge is no longer available for everyone. For more on this controversial decision, we're joined from Berlin by Deutsche Welle correspondent Nicole Froelich. Nicole, why is Germany halting government-funded testing?
Well, this move is meant to motivate more people to get vaccinated. Many establishments here in Germany now only allow people who are vaccinated, tested, or have recovered from a COVID infection to access their offers. That could be restaurants, gyms, or movie theaters. So if you're not vaccinated and you want to engage in social activities, it's going to cost you. Until now, the government had invested around €3 billion in the free testing infrastructure. Now they say that everybody has received an offer to get vaccinated, and if they haven't taken it, well, it's up to them to deal with the consequences. There has been some significant backlash to this approach. Many people think that at €19, the tests are too expensive and that will lead to people not getting tested at all. That can, in turn, of course, have a blurring effect on Germany's COVID statistics, with official and real case numbers drifting further and further apart, and could lead to more infections going unnoticed. It remains to be seen if this new approach can do much to convince vaccine skeptics. Pressure, whether it be political or social, has actually led to a more defiant attitude from the people who don't want to get vaccinated here in Germany. And a recent poll revealed that a large majority of those who are not yet immunized are refraining from getting the shot out of spite.
Nicole, there seems to be some confusion as to how many people in Germany are vaccinated. How come?
This is a bit of an odd affair. The German Center for Disease Control came out last week doubting its own numbers. According to the official count, 75% of Germans have been fully vaccinated, but they believe that the true number is much higher, that it's actually 80%. The center blames this incoherence on transmission errors, with large amounts of inoculations allegedly going unreported. The numbers they now believe to be true are based on the assumption that all delivered doses have been administered. Several polls also suggest the true quota to be much higher than the official one. Now, you could think that this is only nitpicking, but these are the numbers that inform the German government's decision on how to move forward with its anti-COVID strategy. Experts have calculated a necessary vaccination quota of at least 85% for herd immunity to be achieved. Now, the question many, especially opposition politicians, are asking is whether the numbers are really much better than we thought, meaning Germany could theoretically be at the gates of herd immunity, or if this is the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Germany, which responds to the health ministry, giving the numbers a little boost before a winter that many lockdown-weary Germans go into quite nervously.
Now, Germany doesn't have a vaccine mandate, but other countries are taking more strict measures, like Italy, and its moves have triggered riots over the weekend. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, on Saturday, some 10,000 people took to the streets of Rome to protest against the decision to make the so-called Green Pass, a health passport, mandatory for all workers. And that protest turned into a full-blown riot. A group broke into the headquarters of Italy's main trade union, who have supported the pass, and security forces had to push back an angry mob trying to get through to the offices of the Prime Minister. We had seen protests against these kinds of measures in other places, mainly Paris, but this march was very different. On the streets, anti-vaxxers and others opposed to the health pass walked side by side with far-right extremists. And it now seems that the whole thing was even orchestrated by the neo-fascist group Forza Nuova. Prominent party figures called on demonstrators to take back Rome, and in telegram messages, organizers pushed for people to, quote, use all means to recover freedom. The Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, has deemed the incidents an attack on democracy. 12 people have been arrested so far, and 2 probes launched into the riots. The events have been unanimously condemned by political parties in Italy, a country which, of course, was horribly scarred by fascism in the first half of the 20th century. And now pressure is mounting on the government to ban Forza Nuova.
Nicole Froelich reporting from Berlin. Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to speed up COVID vaccinations as the country records its highest daily death toll in the pandemic. Nearly 1,000 people died yesterday, and the soaring infection rate is putting pressure on the health system. Less than 30% of the population is fully vaccinated. Despite the rapidly mounting toll, the Kremlin has ruled out a nationwide lockdown. Some regions have imposed restrictions on large gatherings, but life remains largely normal in Moscow, St. Petersburg and many other Russian cities. Time for a look at the weather now.